Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. Today, we're diving into the mysterious case of Jay Slater, a boy who traveled to Tenerife for fun, but never made it back home. What happened to him will shock you, so stick around till the very end to uncover what really happened in those mountains. He was just 19, a young British tourist who flew out to Tenerife for sun, music, and memories. What was supposed to be a carefree trip with friends. But what happened to Jay Slater has turned into one of the most disturbing and viral mysteries of 2024. His disappearance, and later the discovery of his body under suspicious conditions, has left a trail of questions that no one, neither Spanish authorities, his family, nor online investigators, can answer. And what's most chilling, the people closest to him say things don't add up. This is the story of Jay Slater's death abroad, and the questions that refuse to die with him. Jay Slater, a 19-year-old apprentice bricklayer from Oswestwizel, Lancashire, flew to Tenerife in June 2024 to attend the New Rave Generation music festival with friends. It was supposed to be a standard youth getaway, a few days of music, sun, and nightlife in one of Spain's most tourist-heavy islands. But by the morning of June 17th, that trip had turned into an international missing persons case. Jay had attended a festival event the night before, and according to reports, he left the venue with two older men who were described as not part of his close friend group. Jay ended up at an Airbnb located in a remote mountainous area of the island, specifically near the village of Masca, which is surrounded by steep cliffs and dense vegetation. The last known communication from Jay was a phone call to his friend, Lucy May, at approximately 8:50 a.m. on June 17th. In that call, Jay said he was lost, had missed a bus, was attempting to walk back to their accommodation, had no water, and his phone was on 1% battery. He reportedly also said he had injured his leg on a cactus. According to Lucy May, Jay sounded disoriented but not panicked. His phone's last signal pinged in the rural de Teno area, a rugged national park in northwestern Tenerife that is known for its sharp drop-offs, narrow trails, and extremely difficult terrain. Then, contact was lost. Jay Slater was missing. Initial search efforts began swiftly and grew rapidly. Spanish authorities initiated a massive operation involving civil guard officers, drones, helicopters, search dogs, and mountain rescue teams. The terrain of the rural de Teno Park posed enormous challenges. It's not only vast, but features steep ravines, uneven paths, and numerous crevices where someone could fall or remain unnoticed. Temperatures in the area were high during the day, and Jay had reportedly been wearing only casual clothing, not equipped for hiking in extreme conditions. Despite these efforts, no significant clues were found. The search covered several square kilometers and lasted for weeks. Authorities checked known paths, ridgelines, ravines, and even used thermal imaging, but Jay remained missing. Online communities, particularly on TikTok and Reddit, began piecing together timelines and maps, attempting to triangulate locations based on sparse clues from social media posts and limited information from authorities. That a critical aspect that intensified online speculation was the identity and background of the two men Jay was last seen with. These individuals, who were staying at the Airbnb in Masca, were reportedly questioned and released by authorities. Their identities were not publicly disclosed, but online sleuths claimed at least one had a past involving petty crime. Questions began to circulate. Why did Jay go with them? Was he lured under false pretenses? Did he try to leave and get lost? Or was he running from something? Meanwhile, Jay's mother, Debbie Duncan, flew to Tenerife and became the face of the search effort. She gave emotional press statements, appeared on several UK media outlets, and directly criticized the Spanish authorities for what she described as a slow and disorganized response. She also claimed that her son would never have willingly ventured into the remote mountains, suggesting instead that he was possibly forced or manipulated. She described her growing frustration and heartbreak as days turned into weeks with no answers. As the search entered its second week, media coverage in the UK surged. The case was reported on by BBC, Sky News, and multiple tabloid outlets. The longer Jay remained missing, the more scrutiny the case received, not just from journalists, but from the public. Misinformation and conspiracies began spreading rapidly. On social platforms, some theorists suggested he had faked his disappearance. Others believed he had been abducted or harmed due to witnessing a crime. Still others speculated on drug involvement, based on rumors that substances were used the night before his disappearance. But despite all this attention, no trace of Jay was found until over a month later. On July 23rd, Jay Slater's body was discovered in a ravine near the area he was last known to be. Spanish police reported that his remains were found in an advanced state of decomposition, but they did confirm the identity. The cause of death, according to early reports, was trauma consistent with a fall. There were additional findings. His phone and Rolex watch were missing, and toxicology tests later reportedly revealed MDMA, cocaine, and ketamine in his system. This discovery raised more questions than it answered. The area where Jay's body was found had allegedly already been searched during the early days of the investigation. How could trained rescue teams, drones, and dogs have missed a body in a relatively small radius? Some rescue workers and online commenters speculated that Jay's body may not have been there initially, suggesting a possible delayed disposal. Others suggested that the difficult terrain simply made it too easy to overlook something, even something as tragic and large as a deceased person. Jay's inquest began later that summer in the UK, but was immediately adjourned. Key witnesses failed to appear. Authorities said that they needed more time to investigate circumstances and gather testimony. But to many observers, the inquest felt like a formality. There was no closure. Jay's family expressed deep disappointment in the lack of transparency from both Spanish and UK officials. The fact that so much of the case remained unclear, why he was in the mountains, how he died, why his belongings were missing, left the public unsatisfied. One of the most troubling elements was the absence of crucial digital data. Jay's phone, last pinged in the area where he disappeared, was never recovered. Its GPS history, photos, or messages could have provided clarity. Similarly, there was no CCTV or traffic footage showing him leaving the Airbnb or moving through nearby roads. In an age of constant surveillance and digital tracking, the complete absence of such evidence was unsettling. Jay's mother and close friends have continued to push for a more thorough investigation. They believe the answers are being hidden, whether intentionally or due to lack of coordination between authorities. They've called for renewed searches, independent forensic reviews, and international attention. As of now, however, no further suspects have been arrested, and no new updates have been provided by either the Spanish Civil Guard or UK Metropolitan Police. This absence of answers has only deepened the desperation of Jay's family and intensified the firestorm online. His mother, Debbie Duncan, has continued to speak out, granting interviews to British press outlets where she's pleaded for justice, clarity, and support. In one interview with ITV News, she said, "I just want the truth. I want to know what happened to my son. Someone knows something." Her voice broke on camera, and it wasn't just grief in her tone, it was frustration. Frustration that more than a month after her son's disappearance, the systems meant to protect and investigate had yielded only silence. Jay's best friend, Brad Mitchell, also spoke to Sky News, saying that Jay was not the kind of person to wander off alone. Jay didn't like being alone, Brad said. He was always with people, always chatting, always laughing. He would have messaged someone if he was in trouble. He wouldn't just vanish. Brad's comments echoed those of Jay's other friends, who unanimously agreed that the situation didn't align with Jay's personality or past behavior. This sentiment has been picked up by amateur online investigators. Reddit threads dedicated to the case grew into thousands of comments, with users breaking down everything from terrain maps to satellite data. TikTok creators compiled theories and timelines, and Instagram stories circulated maps, screenshots of Jay's last known messages, and quotes from friends and family. One widely shared theory was that Jay had uncovered something he wasn't supposed to, something that made him a target. Others focused on the Airbnb guests he was last seen with, pressing authorities and the media for more transparency on who they were and why Jay, a teenager from the UK, ended up alone with them in a remote part of Tenerife. One troubling element came from Lucy May, the friend who spoke with Jay in his final phone call. She reiterated in several interviews that Jay mentioned being chased. He said someone was following him, she told reporters. He said he didn't know where he was, and that he was scared. Authorities have neither confirmed nor denied this claim, citing ongoing investigations. But to the public, this detail felt too important to dismiss. Why hadn't that led to a larger-scale criminal investigation from the outset? Was it being downplayed, or was there more to the story that authorities weren't sharing? Adding to the confusion were conflicting reports from local residents in the Masca area. Several locals claimed they never saw Jay walking the mountain roads that morning, even though the only logical way back to town was through paths that would be visible from homes and rural routes. One local man, interviewed by El Dia, a regional paper, stated, "I was driving around that area at the same time. If a boy was out there, alone, I would have seen him. It's not a place where you go unnoticed." Another hiker who passed through the area 2 days later told journalists he saw nothing unusual. No clothing, no disturbed brush, no sign someone had recently moved through the dense trail. Despite the speculation, no criminal charges have been filed. Spanish police have remained tight-lipped. When asked by journalists whether foul play had been ruled out, their spokesperson gave only a vague statement. "We continue to look at all possibilities, and the investigation remains open." But as days turned into weeks, and then into over a month before Jay's body was found, public confidence in the investigation began to erode. More troubling still was the location of Jay's body. According to early search logs released to the press, the area where his remains were found had been searched in the first days following his disappearance. Helicopters with thermal imaging and ground teams with dogs had passed through the general vicinity for Jay's body to be discovered there weeks later, and in a location that supposedly had already been cleared, sparked renewed speculation. Had someone placed his body there after the fact? Was the initial search flawed? Or was the terrain so treacherous that even trained professionals missed what was in front of them? As autopsy results trickled out, further confusion surfaced. While the official preliminary cause of death was ruled as injuries consistent with a fall, the final autopsy report has yet to be made public. Toxicology reports reportedly indicated multiple substances in Jay's system, including MDMA, cocaine, and ketamine. While some used this to speculate that drugs impaired his judgment, others, including his mother, rejected the implication. Debbie Duncan responded in an interview with The Mirror, "Even if he had taken something, that doesn't explain everything else. It doesn't explain why he was out there, alone, with no help. It doesn't explain why no one is being held accountable." Her concerns have been echoed by British politicians who have raised the issue in Parliament. A local MP called for more diplomatic pressure on Spanish authorities to provide transparent updates. So far, official diplomatic correspondence has remained behind closed doors. Still, this pressure is a rare step in a missing persons case abroad and speaks to the level of public attention and outrage surrounding Jay's story. Back in Oswaldtwistle, Jay's hometown, the community has been shaken. Local pubs held fundraisers to support the family, and murals and posters went up around the area with messages like "Justice for Jay" and "Never Forgotten." In the weeks following the discovery of Jay's body, vigils were held not only in his hometown, but also in cities across the UK. At one vigil in Manchester, over 500 people gathered with candles and signs, calling for answers and chanting his name. His story, amplified by social media, became more than a local tragedy. It became a symbol of how quickly a young life can disappear into the cracks between borders, between systems, between accountability and silence. People from around the world have commented on the injustice they perceive, noting the discrepancy in effort and transparency depending on a person's nationality or background. Meanwhile, international journalists have begun conducting their own investigations, retracing Jay's last known steps and interviewing locals. A documentary crew from Channel 4 reportedly visited Tenerife in early August 2024 to begin production on a detailed special about the case. According to insiders, the program will include unreleased witness interviews, data analysis from GPS logs, and testimony from those involved in the original search. As time drags on without meaningful updates from authorities, the hunger for truth continues to grow. Jay's story is no longer just about what happened on the island of Tenerife. It has become a lens through which people view the broader failures of cross-border investigations, youth safety abroad, and the limits of official narratives in the age of viral media. As Jay's face continues to circulate on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, his memory isn't fading. But the truth? That remains hidden, just like Jay was for over a month, in plain sight, yet somehow unseen. Since his body was discovered, the silence from both Spanish and UK authorities has been overwhelming. No comprehensive autopsy report has been made public, no detailed timeline has been clarified, and no suspects have been publicly named or arrested. For Jay's family, especially his mother, Debbie Duncan, it's not just heartbreaking, it's infuriating. In multiple interviews, she's spoken of the pain that comes not just from loss, but from silence. It's like he just disappeared, and nobody's willing to say how or why. She told the BBC, the timeline remains fractured. The last confirmed sighting of Jay was at the remote Airbnb near Masca, where he'd reportedly gone with two older British men. These men, questioned and released by Spanish police, returned to the UK. Their identities were never officially disclosed. Media outlets tried to contact them, but they remained silent. Spanish officials said there was no evidence of wrongdoing. But for many watching the case unfold, that wasn't enough. Why was Jay out there, in such an isolated and dangerous area, alone? Why didn't he accept help from the men or ask for a ride back into town? And more importantly, why hasn't that location been explained more thoroughly? Jay's friends insist that something about the story doesn't add up. Brad Mitchell, his best friend, said in a Sky News interview, Jay didn't go walking in nature. He wasn't an explorer. Something must have happened to make him go that way. Or someone made him. Lucy May, the friend who received Jay's final phone call, still remembers how his voice sounded. She told reporters that he was scared, that he said he was lost and running low on phone battery, and that he believed someone was following him. Police never confirmed this detail, nor did they use it as the basis for a public appeal. It was simply absorbed into the background noise of unconfirmed theories and forgotten threads. In Masca, several locals expressed doubt about the official timeline. A few residents who live along the road Jay would have had to take back into town say they didn't see anyone that morning. One man told a regional newspaper, "If a young British lad was out there, we would have noticed. It's not a place where strangers go unnoticed, especially not at that hour." Another said he saw nothing disturbed, no broken branches or signs. Someone had come through the steep walking paths near his home. This absence of credible sightings during the critical time frame continues to puzzle investigators and the public alike. Then there's the phone, the one piece of technology that could hold answers to Jay's final movements. His last call, pinged in the mountainous Tenerife Rural Park, but the device itself has never been found. Despite widespread search efforts using signal triangulation and thermal drones, the phone simply vanished. Experts have stated that modern smartphones retain encrypted GPS logs even when powered down or offline, which could have reconstructed Jay's route. But without the phone, that data is lost. Some believe it was taken or destroyed intentionally. Others suspect it may still be lying somewhere in the terrain, missed during the initial search or taken by animals. Adding fuel to the public's frustration is the lack of CCTV footage. For an island filled with tourists, rental properties, and traffic, the absence of surveillance showing Jay walking from the Airbnb has been described as bizarre by multiple British media analysts. Spanish officials have stated that the mountainous area lacks comprehensive camera coverage, but Jay's supporters argue there should have at least been passing vehicle footage or footage from nearby villages. If Jay made it onto the main road, or into any populated zone, some camera, should have seen him. Debbie Duncan has continued pushing for answers. She's given interviews to nearly every major UK outlet, from ITV to The Guardian. Her pain has become symbolic of something larger, a family caught in a maze of red tape and cross-border bureaucracy. "I'm not just fighting for Jay," she said in one appearance. "I'm fighting for every family that's ever had to beg for information about a child lost abroad." Her advocacy has led to a growing public demand for diplomatic involvement. A petition requesting a formal UK government review of the case has gained over 300,000 signatures. MPs have raised the issue in Parliament. Yet still, no action has been taken to force Spanish officials to release the full case file. Meanwhile, online investigators haven't stopped. Reddit threads have grown into archives of data, maps, time-stamped sightings, police reports, and User-submitted theories. TikTok accounts dedicated to the case have generated millions of views. Creators have used satellite tools and open-source intelligence, OSINT, methods to digitally reconstruct Jay's potential movements. One group of UK-based OSINT volunteers even attempted to cross-check weather reports, terrain elevation models, and bus schedules to identify inconsistencies in the official story. They concluded that Jay's alleged walk would have taken him over 6 hours in direct sunlight, with no shade, food, or water, and that alone made it unlikely he had intended to go that way on foot. Another issue frequently brought up, the Airbnb itself. According to reports, the property was not cordoned off by police immediately after Jay disappeared. Some believe crucial forensic evidence may have been lost or overlooked in the first 48 hours. The owner of the property gave a statement to a Spanish paper saying she noticed nothing unusual and didn't hear any noise during the night of Jay's stay. Still, the timeline surrounding when the police arrived, whether photos were taken, and who entered or left the house during those crucial early hours remains opaque. Toxicology results reported by the press revealed MDMA, cocaine, and ketamine in Jay's system, information that drew criticism from both his family and the public. Debbie Duncan responded, "Even if he had drugs in his system, that doesn't explain why he was alone in the mountains. It doesn't excuse the failure to find him sooner or to answer basic questions." For many, the focus on drug content felt like an attempt to discredit Jay's character and deflect attention from the investigation's failures. Multiple toxicologists have stated that while the drug combination may have impaired Jay's perception or stamina, it would not account for his total disappearance, the missing phone, or the lack of forensic evidence in the area. That on a governmental level, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, has said little publicly. Privately, sources close to the family say that communication has been inconsistent, often vague, and filled with procedural excuses. Debbie Duncan told The Independent, "We've been bounced around between departments. Nobody wants to take responsibility." She has since called for a full public inquiry into how the British government supports families of citizens who die or go missing abroad under unclear circumstances. As weeks passed, the pressure did not subside. UK media outlets like Channel 4 and ITV began production on investigative documentaries. Several journalists traveled to Tenerife to retrace Jay's final known path, interviewing residents, local hikers, and even taxi drivers who worked the area that morning. Their reporting revealed that search areas weren't as thoroughly covered as initially reported. One mountain rescue volunteer anonymously told a journalist, "We were told the area had been swept, but the terrain is brutal. Unless you have 5 teams grid searching, you're going to miss things." It's not surprising the body wasn't found right away, but it is strange that it turned up exactly where we'd supposedly searched. This revelation has intensified theories that Jay's body may have been placed in that location after the initial search. While no direct evidence supports this idea, the timeline and geography have continued to raise eyebrows. Why was he found? In a spot previously searched? Was it a tragic oversight? Or something more? At the grassroots level, thousands of people continue to demand answers. From public vigils in Oslo Twizzle to online campaigns calling for international pressure, the outcry has remained strong. People are not just demanding justice for Jay, they're demanding reform in how these kinds of cases are handled. Transparency, accountability, and dignity for grieving families. Jay's story isn't just about one young man who went missing in a foreign country. It's about what happens when the systems designed to protect us fall short, and how silence from those in power can be just as devastating as the loss itself. Jay Slater's case, in many ways, has become a tragic benchmark, a warning of how easily a young life can slip through cracks in jurisdiction, coordination, and communication. As the months pass, no one has been held accountable. The inquest remains incomplete. His phone, one of the most vital clues in any modern investigation, is still missing. Authorities from both Spain and the UK remain tight-lipped, citing privacy and procedural barriers. And through all of it, Jay's loved ones are left waiting for answers that may never come, and for justice that still feels just out of reach. In Tenerife, tourism continues. Hikers still walk the trails near Masca, now eerily aware of the tragedy that took place there. Local guides occasionally mention Jay's name, but many have moved on, returning to the rhythms of daily life. The Airbnb in question has resumed operations, quietly and without note. There is no plaque, no warning sign, just a line of trees, a winding mountain road, and the silence of questions still unanswered. But in Oswaldtwistle, and in communities across the UK, Jay's memory has not faded. Murals remain on walls. Digital. Billboards in Manchester lit up with his face weeks after his funeral. Grassroots organizers continue pushing for systemic changes. They're calling for a dedicated cross-border investigation unit, one that ensures families like Jay's aren't left to chase shadows and official silence on their own. They're calling for the preservation of forensic scenes, mandatory translation support, and real-time case tracking for families who lose loved ones abroad. These calls are growing louder, and Jay's story is at the center of them. Back online, thousands of users have made it their mission to keep his story alive. Open forums continue to document everything from satellite data reviews to new witness statements. Some have even begun comparing Jay's case to a broader pattern of similar disappearances in remote tourist regions, cases where initial investigations were sluggish, evidence wasn't secured, and families were left waiting years for closure. That never came. Jay is no longer just a face on a missing persons poster. He has become a symbol of bureaucracy's failures, of the dangers of disjointed investigations, and of how quickly a mystery can be forgotten if the public stops paying attention. But you haven't forgotten. You're here. You're watching. And that matters. Jay's family, especially his mother, Debbie Duncan, continues to demand transparency. Her voice, raw with grief but steady with purpose, has pushed the case into headlines even when authorities had hoped it would fade away. Her refusal to remain silent, her willingness to sit in interviews and relive the pain just to demand justice for her son, has moved people worldwide. "I'm not going away," she said during a recent vigil. "I will keep fighting until I know everything. I will not let this disappear like he did." And that's what this has become. A fight, not just for Jay, but for every family that's ever been told to wait for an update that never comes. As pressure builds on both governments, the public's role becomes even more critical. Stories like Jay's don't just need to be told. They need to be remembered. Because somewhere out there, someone may still know something. Someone might have seen something. And the more people who know Jay's story, the harder it becomes. For those responsible to hide behind the comfort of silence, if this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Click subscribe, because we cover real stories like this, the ones the headlines forget, but the world needs to remember. Comment below what you think really happened to Jay, because your voice matters. And check out the other unsolved mysteries on our channel, real stories that deserve real answers. Jay Slater's journey should have ended with sunburns and laughter. Instead, it ended in shadows. And until we shine a light on what happened, his story and the truth will remain buried in the mountains of Tenerife.